Good afternoon and welcome to UCA's online panel discussion. My name is Shaukat Ali Khan and I am the Chief Information Officer here at the University of Central Asia. I hope you are all doing well in these unprecedented times. I would like to also welcome all our viewers on Facebook Live. Our today's topic is key technology drivers of higher education during and after COVID-19. I'm honored to introduce our distinguished panels. Our first panel member is Chris Hanley, Chief Information Officer, Nazarbayev University, Kazakhstan. Chris Hanley is an accomplished healthcare and higher education technology executive with quantified results leading turnaround efforts and building state-of-the-art technology infrastructures. Our second panelist is Russell Withers, Global Chief Information Officer from the Aga Khan University and hospitals, overseeing information systems landscape in Pakistan, United Kingdom, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, and Afghanistan. Our third panelist is Almas Bakanov. Almaz is the IT director and head of the software engineering department at the American University of Central Asia, Kyrgyz Republic. Bakano is also the director of the National Center for Information Technology at Kyrgyz Republic, where you can take IT certificate exams. My first question is towards Chris Hanley. Can you please explain your digital journey so far, how you have coped with COVID-19, and what are the lessons learned from your end?
Sure, let me share my screen to start. So this is late February, and this next one is the next day. At least it would be if I could go through slide and get it going. And then all of a sudden it was like this. And we were exactly like you. We all of a sudden got thrown into the deep end of the pool. We had no idea this was going to happen. I thought it was the flu. I was about to leave Kazakhstan for 2 weeks home leave in Australia. And I left. And then immediately we landed, we had to shut the campus down. So immediately we had to take the students out. We had about 6,000 students on campus. We had to help them get back to their home cities. We had no way of doing this because we did not, you will hear from Russell after me, and they have a history of blended and online learning. There was none in Kazakhstan. So we had to figure out a low training solution for our faculty. We did have Moodle, we need to expand it. And we had to move all the faculty and staff to their homes. And so we finished that spring semester of about a month and then ran an online summer semester. And this last fall, we've been entirely online for all 600 graduate and undergraduates. And we're now contemplating an online spring in 2020. So what did we learn as service providers? It was a shock for us, partly because we'd never done it. So we found out that faculty could use Zoom and Moodle, and there was a huge difference on whether they wanted to be live or whether they wanted just to put everything online and expect the students to do it. The students were able to attend from home all the way across Kazakhstan, and that surprised me. And the connectivity varied by the time of day because everyone, including high school students, was now online. We had to dedicate 5 times as much hardware to support Moodle to enable us to get 2,000 tests at the same time. And because we have a medical school, we did allow 2,200 students out of the 6,000 on campus, and that included PhD students who needed lab access. Surprisingly, only a small percentage of students needed to borrow a laptop from the university. And also surprisingly, the vast majority of homes, and we were able to do a location by location survey, a vast majority had good internet service. They had 3 or 4G connectivity, and in many cases, at least 2 vendors operating those for each house. So we always knew that it was going to be, we were going to be successful in our own eyes, but it was important to find out what the students thought. So we surveyed the 6,000 students in September, and we had 4,500 responding. Of course, face-to-face teaching was preferred. But oddly, and it surprised me, face-to-face plus remote was said to be the most effective. So in other words, they really did like blended learning, even though they'd never done it before. Now, it was quite different. The undergraduates tended not to like it, and the graduate students liked it, believing that the instructors were using technology effectively. It should be pointed out that all of these instructors were the same instructors, graduate and undergraduate. So I'm at a loss to explain why that is. 40% of the students reported that they'd adapted well or very well, and 60% said they didn't. And graduate students follow the same trend as saying they were twice as well adapted as the undergraduates. Pretty much all of them said that blended learning required more effort. And less than 50% of undergraduates were satisfied with their own engagement in learning. They weren't blaming the technology or the professor. It was how they were connecting, and they felt that they weren't doing their jobs. So what were the top 3 challenges? Lack of communications with other students, motivation on their part to learn online, especially for the 1,800 first-year students. They'd never done this before, and they were expecting to be at a university. And the inability, some of them felt they couldn't learn effectively online. A lot complained about the home environment, that having all their brothers and sisters around got in the way of learning. But oddly, when they were asked to say positive things, they said the home environment support was a positive experience during this time. Once again, surprisingly, only 10% said that they needed more technical support. Unsurprisingly, all students reported internet speeds or stability issues, and 10% reported local power outages at their home. Once again, I was surprised by the fact that 90% of them had a smartphone that only they owned, and 80% have a laptop that only they owned and didn't share it with others, which was a huge relief. 9% had a tablet and 8% had a desktop. So what principles for delivering technology did we learn? First of all, the perfect is the enemy of the good. You shouldn't, when there's this dramatic change, worry about the fact that it's not exactly the same as it was. Make it so it works. Focus on learning. Don't worry about focus in a university on research. That takes care of itself. The primary thing that is most fragile is the student learning, and especially focus on vulnerable students. And by that, I mean the first-year students. They came from high schools, they came to universities expecting to be around other students, and yet here they were at home. And it has been very hard on them. Equally, however, it was hard for all the employees, the faculty, and the staff, because all of a sudden they were working at home. And that means working with your family around, because your children aren't going to school because they're doing blended learning while you're doing online work. The one thing we did discover that people feel lonely and they don't attach to others. So we found we had to push social media, especially for the students, using a product called Telegram. But even for the faculty and staff, they needed the social relationships that they used to have at work. We learned to virtualize as much as we could. we put all of our licenses online, and as many of the electronic books that we could online, we had to pull up dozens and eventually hundreds of virtual servers to make this all work. We realized we had to use site licenses rather than individual licenses for academic packages, especially statistics. We couldn't afford individual licenses. And in some cases, we're encouraging people to use open source statistical packages. The other principle was we have to look at brick and mortar assumptions for cost effectiveness. What does that mean? That means we have computer labs, dozens of them, with hundreds of computers. Well, now the students are all used to working remotely, so we don't need those computer labs. And also we have to figure out what we're going to do with the labs where we teach physics, chemistry, math, because we won't need as many because we're moving all of this teaching online. We learned to survey our customers regularly, really because when they're not there, you don't hear from them. So we have to go out and ask by giving them surveys. And the last one is so important. Remain vigilant and agile because we don't know what's coming next. And I fear this isn't changing rapidly. So what is next for COVID? None of us know. But no matter what happens, we have to be more strategic than we have been and more sensitive to the needs of our customers. We will probably replace both Zoom and Moodle with other packages, or certainly we will add other functionality to them. And we have to recognize that real changes have happened to the service delivery model. In the office, the classroom, the library, the computer labs, and the science labs. It's not going to go back to the way it was before because now the faculty have made the changes. And by the end of this year, they'll have been doing it for a year and a half. Now, and I think there's a good possibility of this, COVID is with us for 2 more years. We really have to consider changing how we teach, which means revising the style of examinations. And because it's important that the students have a connection to the campus, we need to bring them in for defined times. We are trying to figure out what that would mean, but they need to bind with the other students in their class. And most of them, or many of them, need some form of hands-on laboratories for their topics. The other thing we're exploring right now is putting staffed sites in the regions where the students come out of their home and go in their city and stay and work in a place that is rented by the university that has staff there to enable them once again to see each other. I would just ask you, and this is my last slide, to think about this. I looked just about 3 days ago, and this is a slide of the cases worldwide that have grown. And right now it's at 40 million. And notice the shape of the line, the slope of the line. It's going up. And until that flattens, we'll be stuck in the same boat that we're in. So in ending, I would say technology has enabled us to do what we have done as rapidly as we did. We could not have done it without it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Very, very interesting, and thanks for sharing your experience. It's very interesting that, and of course, we were all on the same boat because we all had the same
Yes.
challenges of coping with this.
Right.
And one of the important things which I think it's an opportunity also is that there is no one far ahead or far beyond. We are all on the same line. It's a matter of how we are coping with this challenge to continue our to enable our environment so that the education will continue. So going towards Russell Withers, and Russell, you have a more challenging actually assignment because at one hand you have hospital, which is on a critical need and during this time, and at the same time the overall education in many countries. So what is your experience so far, and then what are the lessons learned so far from your end?
Thanks, Shaka. I suppose more than ever, we've realised that technology is a strategic asset, and it's vital for the success of the organisation. So that's a key piece, and that the digital transformation is fundamental in how we move forward, and it enables so much more for the organisation. So at Aga Khan, we've been on this journey for a long period of time, but it's interesting to understand the perspective of a lot of our students. And we actually, similar to what Chris was talking about, we actually closed the universities because of the issues around COVID, being the campuses are located on the premise with the hospitals. So we closed the universities and sent the students home. So we shut down. And from that, I suppose part of that is, then I'm starting to understand the challenges for those students as they go back to their homes. And, the disparity in the digital world that exists, even in first world countries it exists, but even more so in the areas that we operate in. So, for instance, in Kenya, people leave the cities and they go home. They don't necessarily have the internet coverage, they have mobile coverage, but do they have the data packages to support it? In parts of Pakistan, it's quite remote. And, as Chris mentioned, I think in his presentation, they were surprised that a lot of students had their own mobile phone and laptop. We're also seeing a lot of that where the students in those remote areas, they don't have the mobile phone. It's a shared phone for the household. There is no device. So we've seen that. I mean, part of the journey for Aga Khan has been, we have been on the blended learning pathway for a significant period of time. And it is one of the advantages we faced as we went into this. So, that helped us, but equally it was also part of our, in the areas we're offering courses, certainly in the medical profession, is also getting those courses, certainly in parts of East Africa, getting them certified by the government, that we can go from a classroom environment to an online environment. So they present a range of challenges and they don't necessarily happen in a short window. So there's been a raft of issues there. The other challenge, of course, is, I suppose, is once again, alluding part of what Chris was talking about, is when we get into some of these more remote areas, is, there may not be the capacity for the student to operate at home. Even in the cities, in Karachi, for instance, many of our staff and students who are at home trying to do their courses and also just work are sharing a household or an apartment with multiple members of the family, maybe multiple families, their own, the parents and siblings. So it's not a conducive environment. So how do they get through that and the challenges that presents? But I think, we have been able to leverage certain parts of the technology platforms. So yes, we've had Zoom for a period of time, and a lot of our academics are continuing to use Zoom as the vehicle of choice. Partway through the journey though, we have now rolled out Microsoft Teams. We've rolled it out across the organization, and we now have various components of the university running the sort of the courses. They've put them together in teams and they're using that as the vehicle to deliver. So we have a multi-mode delivery environment. Part of that was we rolled that platform out to the students as well. So we said, here's the tools. Here is some capacity for storing. So we've given them that as a platform for their own personal use. And part of that alludes itself back to, when the students are in the campus and they're in the classrooms, we're able to, sort of obviously protect them and provide sort of that guidance and security. But when they go online, as we've seen across this whole COVID, pandemic, security and the ability for those people who wish to, dare I say, distract, disturb, interrupt educational sessions and be they in whatever form, has been heightened. And we've seen those same instances happen in some of our sessions. So it's about how we secure people in an online environment, how we protect them. So they're normally sit in a classroom. Well, we've got that protected on a campus. But once you go online, there is a challenge. And equally, part of that has been about how do we, from a security perspective, how have we had to deal with that for the students to make sure that they have platforms and they have the tools available to them to, one, securely access stuff, but equally to put stuff in a secure location. So they've been some of the challenges that we have experienced. We're not through the journey yet. We're starting to bring students back to campus, and obviously, as you know, as Chris showed in his slide, we're seeing the numbers ramp again. And you know, so we're in that sort of hybrid state. But that blended learning world has stood us in good stead. And you know, we've had to push our not just the faculty, but basically 90% of this organisation, excluding the doctors and nurses who are actually in the hospitals, but all the support mechanisms have all gone home to work. And that in itself has presented challenges because they, like the students, suffer from some of that technology divide. And, you know, be that, you know, do they have data packages? So part of what we've been doing, not so much for the staff, we've been trying to help them as much as we can, but for the students, we've been providing, you know, looking at loan devices and how do we do that? Also, what is the type of device they have and can that be used to access our systems? Once again, in a secure fashion. And I think one of the key things that's come out of this, you know, that digital transformation through COVID and how that's enhanced higher education has been security has always been sort of on the edge. It's now become more front and center because people are trying to interact and they need to make sure that that component of it is now more a priority than it may have been in the past. And we're starting to see that pervade its way across the organization. So where we've had loose forms of communication with people, we're now saying, how can we tighten that up? How can we allow the students to still be students and do their own thing, but when they interact with us, do it in a more secured environment so that we can go, yep, we've got the material, we're presenting you material. We've also struggled in, you know, and I'll share this with you, in dealing with some of the students who are more remote and I've spoken about internet and that access. How do we get content to those who actually don't have internet, but they have a device? So how do we actually provide that in an encapsulated form, in some sort of digital form that they can receive and then use to walk through the training and or listen in an audio fashion back to a lecture? So how do we do the distance learning component with, they've now got content and they can now log in and do that. We've also, I suppose, you know, once again, go back to part of what Chris said, you know, we've tried to leverage the broader organizational components. You know, we have a lot of centers across the AKU world that are in remote locations. And how can we use some of those and some of those schools to allow the students to come into them as they're empty or they have capacity for the students to find somewhere to actually do their studies. So it's been a digital component, but there's also been a lot of logistics and how do we plan that out to enable them to come back on board. And yes, it has been slow, but you know, we've tried to make it as seamless as possible. You know, we're also looking at how we fund those people, how we fund packages to those students through data packages and other componentry. So look, I think, you know, all in all, we were well prepared. I would say we're not well prepared. We were better prepared than most because of the way we had built blended learning, and that's allowed us to step up. Technology-wise, from connectivity and digital environments, we were reasonably well advanced. The biggest challenge, as I'll reiterate, is connectivity, and connectivity is the killer in blended learning and other forms. And just general communication with the students. How do you know and how do you reach out and provide that support network to them if you can't necessarily contact them? So those have been some of our challenges. I don't believe that we are, you know, ahead of everybody else. In some areas we are, maybe in this community, but we're no better off than anybody else. We see unique challenges, and some of those unique challenges are location-based, contextual-based. Right, the things we see in Pakistan, we might not see in East Africa, but we see some other things in East Africa which challenge us differently, right? And so that's a nuance to us. And then we see different things again out of Afghanistan. London, different environment, but equally there, the way the lecturers have responded in building content and delivering training and education to people, and then using that to teach other members of faculty how to use new tool sets to deliver has been interesting. So we've literally, and just as an example, we've gone literally from 0 Teams users to over 6,000 in about 3 months. And it is becoming the vehicle of choice from a security and the capability and just down to what the students can use. We've given them capability to have their own storage with SharePoint and everything else. So we've enabled a lot of that digital platform for them, which will be things that they can use moving on as well. So they've been key things in that transformation journey, giving them tool sets which they can use not just in their education, but in their personal life. And that's helped us a lot. So Shakir, I think, you know, that's part of our experience. Does that help?
Thank you very much, Russell. It's very, very interesting to see. And then you can see that there are commonalities of how Chris and the organization deal with, and then how AKU deal with, because there are these very well-reputed tools which many organizations are using. So I'm going towards Almaz and then requesting him to share his experience from American University in Central Asia, because I know that as part of UCA in Kyrgyzstan that there was so we received a announcement from the government about the lockdown of all the educational institutions, and then how you cope with that announcement, and then what were the technology drivers, what drive the whole continuity of education at American University?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be part of this outreach session. Yeah, well, actually last spring we did not start from scratch. For example, we started to use Google G Suite 5 years ago, and we used video conferencing toolset like WebEx in our teaching sessions. And Moodle, of course, it's widely used for our electronic course as our electronic course application and for online instruction. The only difference before pandemic and after, it was that the access to those applications was organized only from our campus local network. And of course, for us, it took time to switch and provide to everybody access from their housing premises. And yeah, now it's everything is accessible from our faculty apartments. And also, last spring we successfully adapted video conferencing platform Zoom. And actually, Zoom, it's our faculty. Now they prefer Zoom rather than WebEx. And after successfully completing this our spring semester over summer, and currently AUCS Center for Teaching, Learning, and Technology, they conducting a series of interactive online sessions. They're teaching our faculty instructors how to use Moodle ecosystem to create interactive courseware. Even last 2 weeks ago, I myself attended in such session where I learned how to use H5P toolset for editing editing video, creating video, and adding these pictures and other interesting effects to the video. And now, as a lesson learned, we realize that we need to switch from campus-based solutions to the cloud or software for everyone solutions. And as a good example, of course, it's Office 365, and UCA it's already using this, using this approach. And we are looking for more cloud-based solutions currently. And in post-COVID time, I believe that our since our many faculty members, they already have strong motivation and participating in this synchronous online teaching and became familiar with various online tools. It will be combined with traditional technology, education technology, and we will smoothly move to blended education, adapt this blended educational methodology. And of course, when we'll come back to campus, hopefully in near future, social distancing will be in place probably forever. For example, currently we already stopped handshaking, which was hardly believable in our region and culture. And of course, we continue to support our cashless campus concept, which was introduced 4 years ago in our university. And additionally, maybe we'll add some mobile money payment option. And probably healthcare mobile applications, they will be in place. They will start tracking our social contact and probably inform and warn us when somebody will get sick. Yeah, definitely the world will not be the same because there will be long-lasting effects. Yeah, this is our experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chalmaz. It's very, very interesting. And then all experiences, of course, there are opportunities and also there are challenges. So we are getting some questions. So I will be putting forward those questions. Just for all the participants, you are also welcome to write your questions in Q&A section here. I'm getting messages and calls about the. I will start with those questions, but you are also have an opportunity to ask directly in the Q&A section. Just write your question and then I will be put forward towards our speaker. So the first question is about cybersecurity. They're saying that how you what is your experience in dealing with the cybersecurity? Because the remote learning and distance learning, they're saying that the remote learning and distance learning started within very short span of time without giving a lot of preparations. So how you dealt with that? So what I would request Chris to copy your response, and then followed by Russell and also Almaz.
Yeah, yeah, it was very interesting because Zoom turns out not to be the most secure piece of software around. So we had students bombing other classes and taking over, typing things during classes. It's one of the reasons, I mean, it's interesting that Russell's gone to Teams. We will probably go to Teams as well next year if I can convince everyone to do it. Zoom really wasn't set up for it. And so it was mainly corporate. And so they hadn't really built in the security that you would want built in. Apart from that, we haven't noticed much. I think pretty much everyone has been too busy trying to survive rather than actually trying to get away with something. We've had difficulty doing testing online securely. We've got faculty pushing us to get proctoring software, but it's quite expensive. And we've been trying to get faculty to actually change the way they do evaluations so that students can't easily cheat. My guess is security risks will always be there. And I don't see a substantial difference, to be perfectly honest.
Okay, so I will just add one more question towards Russell, because I have another question coming out for security. And then they're asking about, there are targeted COVID-19 phishing attacks coming out. So have you experienced this at AKU, and how you dealt with this, especially from the employees awareness point of view?
Thanks, Shaka. Look, we have seen, like all institutions, and because we're a university and we're also a hospital, we've seen heightened attacks. And I was talking to somebody today, and I said, we had over 1 million attempts to attack us in Tanzania in 1 week recently. Right? The volume, it is, the mind of the, and I might call them the criminal, but the mind of the inventive is in a period of chaos, see what they can do to disrupt it even further. And so COVID-19 has been chaotic for everybody, and they have exploited that. We have had many attacks. The number of malware attacks we're seeing, we're stopping at the outer markers. Some get through, but we're stopping a lot. But we've had the sessions, I think, as Chris mentioned, the bombing of sessions. But I think one of the things we've been doing is we've been trying to educate the people on the protocols to use when you're doing something in an online session, be it a Teams, be it a Zoom. Put the protocols in place. Everybody started out. Zoom was always that classic tool. Send the Zoom link and everyone just joins. So people were doing that. And then, there were people bombing. So, we'll put a password on it. Oh, great, we'll put a password on the session. But then the message would get broadcast around and outside of the organization. And then the ones who wanted to exploit it were receiving the emails and the password. So they were still coming in. And we would then, as part of that education, we would say to people, okay, but control who can share the content. And they would go, okay, well, I'll do that. So I'll only share the content. And then, of course, during the course of the presentation, they go, but I want to share something with you. So they started out with tight controls, passworded sessions, no ownership of the content, no one can share. They're getting overwhelmed by having to admit people into the, because they've got a waiting room, so admitting people into the Zoom session. So they go, I'll get rid of the control on admitting people in, so I'll just let anyone in. Then they're talking away, and then someone says, but I want to share some. So then they take away the control of sharing content. And that's when you're at your weakest, and that's when everyone just jumps in and attacks, and that's when you get inappropriate content. And we've had that. But it's adherence to those principles. And what we've been trying to say to people is, if and they're large sessions because you're trying to get as many people to join your audience. Potentially, it's like this audience. Let's get the net as far as we can and get people to come in, right? But who do you know is coming? So as we start to deal with student cohorts in smaller groups, we go to the lecturers, ensure you know who's coming into the session. And if you see someone who you don't recognize trying to be admitted, and that's part of the benefits of Teams, you've actually got to have an email address. If you've got an email address you don't know, you should ask the question before you admit, who is this person? So it's a little bit about protocols, principles, adherence to, and that's hard because you're being bombarded as lecturers and even in meetings outside of the students. And you've got so many people coming, you go, I can't be bothered. I'll just let everyone come and talk to me. But that's when you are at your weakest, and that's when you get attacked. And that's the challenge. That's the challenge of security. But and I think a lot of it also comes back to, as you bring new tools in, it's how do you support those people in the adoption of those new tools? And how do they start to use it? Because they'll fall back and they go, I don't want to do it. But we keep saying, go to the secured environment, go to the secured environment. Here's what that will do for you. Here's what other things it can do for you. So that have been some of our challenges. But, we've been educating people, we've been putting them through training about adherence to policy procedures, guidelines about, the acceptable use of some of the tool sets and following up. And when we see a breach, it's going back and saying, okay, what went wrong? So it's a little bit of reinforcement. It's a little bit like Chris was saying very early on, going back out and health checking and saying, what are you doing? Do you have issues, right? So it's about reinforcement. So that's what we've tried to do. But we are, like many organizations as well, being attacked. And there was a new one today out of the US where the FBI were calling for seeing, attacks on healthcare organizations. So, it's there and it's going to be there for as long as we have more remote people, while the staff are working remotely, while the students. Why? The weakest link is you're no longer inside the ring. You're outside the ring trying to get to the ring. And they will follow you through the gates. As you go in, they'll be piggybacking on you. So it means heightened security awareness inside.
Thank you.
I hope that helps answer that question.
Yes, yes, definitely. And if the participants who are asking these questions, if you have any confusions or anything, you are welcome to just send the message, and then we can get the clarity. So, Almaz, from the IT security, I have another question here. They are saying that if within Kyrgyz Republic, there are a lot of internet issues also within, and then there are a lot of phishing attacks for disturbing the internet and then the traffic part. So have you experienced this at AUCA?
Yeah, you see, it's actually for our networking team. I think this issue is constantly raising, and they're dealing with this almost every day. But when you're on campus, it's easier. You can defend university network. But when you're online, you see, it's very tough, and we're trying to explain to our professors and faculty members that unfortunately we cannot help you with security, this information security, internet, cyber security from your apartments. We need them to talk to all local ISPs, and we have even students from different countries of Central Asia. For example, we 2 days ago we even contacted to Tajikistan, to our colleagues from Tajik Research Educational Network, and asked them to approach a couple ISPs which located in Pamir, because our, for example, e-course was not accessible, and students they complained. And yeah, you see, this is a reality, and we need to tackle this type of issues every day almost. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a question with regards to online synchronous and asynchronous teaching, and they're asking, what are the tools? Are you using Teams and Zoom for teaching, or you are using specific tools for recording the lectures and then making sure that the students who are not getting internet, constant internet, they will still be able to access these lectures? So I can throw this question to I think towards Russell, because I know that from AKU they have a pretty mature digital distance learning program. So maybe you can share a few things on that, Russell.
Yeah, look, I mean, most of our academic fraternity are still using Zoom as their method of choice. You know, we've got a few who are moving across, and the method there is they're recording everything, so it's available for those students who aren't able to come online, right? And then those recordings are being stored and they're available for replay, or they're being sent to the students. So, you know, one of the things we've been looking at is getting the content out to those students in some secure fashion. And so part of that's been about the provision of zip drives and things like that we will share with people for the course. But we record all the online education, and that's just the way we've had to go about it. We're doing the same thing in Teams as well, and providing that for those who, and predominantly the Teams activity is coming out of the UK and parts of East Africa. So it's there, and then we're publishing that on our intranet for people to get to, and also for that in a closed environment on the internet for the students who can't get through. Okay, that's how we've had to go about it.
Thank you, Russell. So another question: what are your measures to help? And I would like Chris to answer this question to start with, and then of course, Almaz, you can also chip in if you have further comments. The question is, what are your measures to help improve teachers' digital capacity at your schools? How does the blended learning, blending teaching look like in practice?
That's a killer question. See, Russell benefits from a woman called Azra Nassim, who I knew because she worked there. Because the way they got into blended learning is they actually had I forget how long it was, Russell, but it's a number of weeks, right? And maybe even months that you train faculty before you do it. We didn't have that. We had not trained them at all. What really was today you're in the classroom, tomorrow you're on the web. I would say I don't have a good answer right now about what we're going to do to fix it. We have created a learning hub for faculty, but it's in catch-up mode. It's very difficult. I didn't appreciate the brilliance of the work that was done at AKU and how much it really helped to prepare faculty. I thought it would be a little easier to learn, and I was surprised when it wasn't. And I was surprised what happened to many faculty who just do, what they do is they dump their stuff online and say at it, and they don't really understand that it has to be blended. And we have to tell them, you still have to have office hours. The students need FaceTime with the faculty, especially in this mode. So I mean, it's both, Shokat, it's good and unfair at the same time that you pitch that question to me, because it's probably the biggest issue we've struggled with over the last 6 months.
Okay, thank you, Chris, for your thoughts on this. Almaz, you want to add anything from your point of view?
Yeah, I think lecturing was not so. Lecturing was the easier part probably in this. I think the tough it's testing and also seminar type of sessions, and for like round tables and discussions. And for that, we using Padlet. And actually, this is a very good tool currently. And we have Center of Learning, Teaching, and Technology. And their staff, this center staff, they are providing training and teaching, instructing our faculty members how to use all these tool sets in their teaching sessions.
Thank you, Almaz. And then there is a $1 million question. Of course, this is something I don't know who will answer, but there's a question that how long do you think this will continue? And then when this will end, that we are forced to have this remote learnings?
I think Chris answered it potentially. We don't know how long COVID's here for, but I believe we're actually in a transition state for a lot of academic institutions who have, traditionally built their campuses and had people come to them. And in some disciplines that's required, they still have to come, but in others, the lower cost provision potentially is through an online form, and also into a competency-based environment. So I think it's a bit of shift. I think there's always a place for both, but I think there is a shift. And I think more and more people who didn't levitate towards online education have now started to understand, because a lot of people have taken it up even in their breaks from their working, from their normal jobs, their jobs were suspended because of COVID lockdowns. Levitated to, how do I upskill myself in case my job goes, to find a new job? They've gone there, and they will go there now. They won't come back and say, I want to go to university, I want to go to a campus. The campus gives you an environment where you can leverage off other students and you get that rich experience. I think that's a point in time. But as things go on, I think the explosion is here. What does it mean for a university? Now they can go anywhere in the world because they can deliver content, provided they get the model right. I don't think it's going to change. I think we're going to see it as a major delivery mechanism for universities, and it moves them away from having to carry so much real estate, which is a high cost. Depreciation on building assets is, so lecturers are able to work, they can do it. As Chris said, what does it take to go from I'm doing it this way to actually understanding how to do blended learning? That is the transformation, which is the real challenge coming. Do the lecturers actually know how to transform from the way they used to deliver to the new way? And if they get that right, then they're there. That's the real challenge. The students will always learn. but the lecturers have now got to move and adopt technology. And that's, I think, part of the digital transformation journey. Creation, content, lecture, and make sure it is, I suppose, exciting.
Yeah, thank you, Russell.
I think the lesson for me that I heard Shaukat even at IKU was the provost once said, listening to one of Azra's sessions, he said, I thought this was about teaching them about technology, but really the sessions were teaching them about pedagogy. Because in many cases, faculty regurgitated the notes that they had foisted on them when they were undergraduates and graduate students. And to really do blended learning, you have to understand it in a different way. And it's to do it effectively, you have to change the pedagogy. And I do think, you know, that phrase I've heard bandied about, never let a pandemic go by you without taking advantage of it. So the advantage has been forced on us. We would not have done it at Nazarbayev, certainly not as rapidly as we've had to. And I think Russell's right. I don't think we're going back. Not totally anyway. And it will change. And the thing to remember is now all the students are different. Now that they've done it for 18 months or 2 years, they're not the students who'd never done it. They're now different customers. So you can't go back to chalk and talk. You have to blend.
Yeah, that's the reality. You're absolutely right, Chris. Just there are some more questions, but I just want to wrap it up because I also have one question. I will take this one question from the audience and then I will ask my question at the end. So whether the master and PhD students will prefer take the classes online only, even when the students allowed return to campuses. Almas, you would like to comment on this?
Yeah, I think the graduate students, they are more mature and I think they can take everything online. There is absolutely no problem. But for undergraduate, I think they need some offline teaching, yeah, learning.
Okay, I think I would like to just wrap up this session with the one question, and I would request all panelists to comment to take 2 minutes and respond. What would be your advice to higher education institutions who are listening around about what they should do? Now the wave one is almost over, but the wave two is on its way. We can see it's going up and up. So what would be your advice based on what we have learned in a pretty one or two things? So maybe we can start with Almas.
Advice to other institution?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah, probably there's software licensing issue. It's very important. We need to go to cloud, I think, and we need to provide everybody with very good solutions and software licensing. This is from my side. Yeah, I think it's very important.
Okay, and Chris, what will be your advice for the higher education institutions, what they should be thinking about for the next 3 to 6 months time?
Well, first of all, Shaukat, I don't think it's 3 to 6 months. I think we're going to be here till the end of 2022. We're going to have this same thing. If that graph at the back at 40 million to go from zero or roughly zero to 4 million worldwide on October 18th, it's not stopping. And since it's not stopping, we're going to have continued expectations that we'll do this. And so universities, to my mind, ours included, have to put more resources in it. We have to spend more time teaching. We have to virtualize as much as we can because the kids aren't coming back for a while and the faculty aren't on campus. It forces us, textbooks are a huge difference because what do you do with the library? You know, we're in the position we're actually mailing textbooks to people across Kazakhstan. You can't do that electronic textbooks, which means you have to get faculty to give up their favorite textbook and say, sorry, that favorite textbook that isn't online, you're going to have to stop using and use this other one that has an ebook version of it. So Shaka, my advice is recognize you got 24 months to get through at least, and you better take it even more seriously than we've taken it.
Thank you very much, Chris. Russell, what would be your advice for the higher education institutions?
Look, I think the sooner they can start looking at how they can build blended learning worlds, they really have to go there. They really have to move into that direction. They have to transition and take their academic and staff and lecturers through that. How should you do this? As Chris, going back to Chris, what was it, Chris? The pedagogy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Pedagogy.
So pedagogy, getting that and understanding. It's not just about taking the lecture and doing this. It's about understanding, getting that. So really focus on that. But so that's that piece from the education student. I think the other piece is, piece to this is understanding the environment your students are going to be learning in. Where are they? So literally do an assessment. Where are you in? Where do you live? What is around you that we can understand from an environment to deliver to you? And that's quite simple. Who are the providers of telecommunication services that might be available to you, and what arrangements can we come to them? Because that is part of the challenge. Allowing the students to be able to work remotely and have access to things. And so you need that contextual assessment as an organization as to where your students are, certainly in a number of our countries. Once you go beyond those, that's much harder to do. But within those areas, you need to get a handle on. And then you need to support your students through that journey by the provision of secure tools, and you need to educate your staff on the use of those tools. That's what I'd say organizations should be trying to do.
Thank you very much, Russell. Thank you very much, Chris, and thank you very much, Almas. I think it was very, very interesting that you have shared your journey so far, and also you gave your advice. So a couple of takeaways that COVID is not going to be over in 3 to 6 months. It's a long journey. We have to be better prepared for that. We have to invest in distance learning, blended learning, if we haven't done it already, and then be patient with the pandemic, because there are a lot of learning, a lot of frustrations, so that we just need to get this over and then start helping each other. So that's the outcome of this great discussion. So I would like to thank all our distinguished speakers, Chris, Russell, and Almas, for your time and then your very valuable thoughts. And thank you very much all the participants here on Zoom, and then we have big numbers on Facebook also. Thank you very much for your time. And we have recorded this session so that you can also watch this on our YouTube channel in a week time. Thank you very much, and very good afternoon. Thank you, and stay safe.